Okay, that's fine.
Rise of the Triad did use the Wolfenstein 3D engine, so it far down the road, my plan is for Easy Wolf to have support for that. I guess I should mention ZDoom and we'll just say ZDoom was one of the early ports that actually merged all of the Doom engine games into a single engine. So that allowed mod authors to take stuff from one game into the other, and yeah, that unlocked a lot of power. A lot of the reason why the early ports didn't do the same was because a lot of the early ones used the GPL license, whereas ZDoom used the original Doom source release licensed originally. And so that gave us a bit more flexibility at the cost of the usual things that you expect with the GPL freedoms. Although these days, it's kind of a dubious benefit now that GZDoom has been used for probably like 30 some odd commercial games on Steam. There end up being a question like, can these games come to consoles? And the answer is no, because of the GPL. And if I could call out Valve for 1 second, they really need to release their Steamworks API under a license that is permittable through the GPL, so we can stop doing these insane workarounds.
Workarounds in what way?
So their Steamworks API is behind a NDA. However, anybody can go to the Steam partner website and sign up and then get a copy of it. So why is there an NDA there? I don't know. So that means that it's GPL incompatible because you can't introduce any further restrictions. And the way that games get around that is, one, you could have a separate process and then communicates through a socket in order to bypass the GPL requirements. Some other games just sort of take the spirit of the GPL into account. Nobody's going to complain if you just like, hey, there's just one thing. The implementation on how to do this is very obvious, and you can get a copy of it. I just can't show you it because the NDA. And then there's also a thing, someone I think re-implemented the API as like Open Steamworks, so like you could implement it and just be like, hey, technically I'm linking against that, but actually I'm not. And then in the case of, EC Wolf is the official port for the Super 3D Noah's Ark re-release on Steam and GOG. And since EC Wolf is dual licensed under both the original source license and the GPL, before Ripper disappeared, Wolfware SDL was originally only nominally under the original source license. I asked Ripper if his intention was that it would be available under any license that id Software licensed it under, and he said, yeah. So then I submitted a patch to add the GPL compile option to it. And so because Wisdom Tree had a license with id Software, I'm not technically beholden to the GPL in that case, but we still follow the spirit because why not release the source code? So it's up on the EC Wolf GitHub.
So you kind of brushed over it there. But for anyone who's unaware, can you just briefly explain Super 3D Noah's Ark?
Yeah, so in 1994 and 1995, a company called Wisdom Tree, also known as Color Dreams, I think, licensed the Wolfenstein 3D engine from id Software, and they were doing Christian Bible games, primarily for the Nintendo consoles, unofficially, of course. And so one of the games they put out was a version of, you would call it a first-person shooter, even though that term kind of feels wrong in this context.
Yeah.
Called Super 3D Noah's Ark using the Wolfenstein 3D engine, specifically the Super Nintendo version. The DOS version came out later and kind of backported some of the features from the Super Nintendo code back into the DOS code base. Yeah, there's a little bit of a misconception going on that it was done out of some sort of spite for Nintendo forcing it to censor the Super Nintendo version of Wolfenstein 3D. As far as Wisdom Tree is concerned, that is false. They licensed it just like everybody else. Whether id Software felt it was funny because of that reason specifically. I can't comment, but yeah.
If you are curious about seeing any other Wisdom Tree games, AVGN like 12 years ago did a Bible Games episode on that. So go and go and check some of that out if you
Yeah.
want to.
The one thing I'll say on that, he did say that like the game was just a reskin of Wolfenstein 3D, but Super 3D Noah's Ark does have 30 unique levels that were
Oh.
designed by the Wisdom Tree team, so it actually is a new game. But yeah, it's using the same code. So.
I think it's just cool that someone made this like that. Like yeah, it's kind of dumb. Yeah, it's like a weird thing. Like it's cool and fun that someone just went and made this.
And Doom had one of those as well in the form of Chex Quest that was distributed in cereal boxes back in the day.
It is cool that like there was so many things just built off of these engines back at that time, and since then there have been so many of these like full conversion mods where people have made these entirely new games based. I think it's especially cool when someone does it now. They want to go back and rather than going and making a game in a modern engine like a Godot or something like that, they go and say, you know what, I'm not going to try to replicate that style. I'm just going to go all in and actually just build something off of that old code.
Yeah, in the case of Doom, a lot of it is those are people that just were modding for Doom and eventually worked up to making a full from scratch game. So I mean, you already had the skill set, so why wouldn't you? And the license allows you to release things commercially, and so yeah, that's pretty much how those come about.
It is really cool. I think it's super cool that the code was even released in the first place. Like that's just not really a thing that basically anyone does. And by doing so, obviously it gave them a lot of like, I could imagine at the time there were probably articles that came out like, wow, look, this is so cool. They released the source code for their game. But it's just cool that they sort of opened that opportunity up, because none of this would have been possible if they didn't go and say, okay, have fun with it.
Yeah, and I mean, even the implications go beyond just the have fun with it aspect.
Preserve it.
Like as I mentioned, there's like 30 some odd games that are using it commercially. So I think and like even outside of Doom, I think like I personally owe my career to having worked on ZDoom. So yeah, just the widespread spread impact that just a little gesture like that can have is pretty amazing.